The Cooperative Republic of Guyana commemorated on the 6th of October the slaughter of 11 innocent citizens in 1976 in what, up to that time, was the worst incident of international terrorism in the Western Hemisphere. Guyanese citizens were killed when 2 terrorist bombs exploded on board the Cubana de Aviación flight CU-455 just off the coast of Barbados. The flight, originating in Guyana, proceeded to Trinidad and Tobago and then to Barbados, and would have been en route to Jamaica before its scheduled final stop in Cuba. A truly Caribbean crime. Ladies and gentlemen, Guyanese know about terrorism. The Caribbean commemorated 6 days later, on the 12th of October, that is last month, the 525th anniversary of European arrival on an island in the Bahamas, right here in the Caribbean, in 1492. Unregistered immigrants. The trickle of European interlopers turned into a torrent, and the region in succeeding centuries experienced the establishment of American, British, Danish, Dutch, French, German, Spanish, Swedish colonies and territories. These visitors made the Caribbean the most balkanized region on earth. The Caribbean became known as the cockpit of Europe, a theater of European conquest and conflict. Warfare between European states was waged in the Caribbean, invariably and vicariously, not only by regular armies and navies, but by irregular bands of buccaneers, corsairs, pirates, and privateers. The Caribbean today is fighting a war against financial privateers. It is fighting to preserve the integrity of its institutions and to counter money laundering and the financing of terrorism. Guyana is part of that fight. Guyana is fit to fight. Guyana embarked on the path of passing robust regulations and legislation to protect its financial system from unlawful activities 17 years ago. It passed the Money Laundering Prevention Act in 2000, the Anti-Money Laundering and the Countering of Financing of Terrorism Act in 2009, the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering of Financing of Terrorism Amendment Act in 2010, the Anti-Money Laundering and the Countering the Financing of Terrorism Amendment Act 2015, and the Anti-Money Laundering and the Countering of the Financing of Terrorism Amendment Act No. 2 in 2015. This legislation progressively has corrected the deficiencies in the anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism regime and allowed for the improvement of compliance with the task force's standards. Ladies and gentlemen, the appropriate agencies, the Bank of Guyana, the Financial Intelligence Unit, and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution have been empowered with the authority and autonomy and have been equipped with the technical and institutional means to discharge their functions under our anti-money laundering and the countering of the financing of terrorism legislation. The Caribbean, after half a millennium of conquest, conflict, and chaos, yearns to be a zone of concord and peace. located within the main sea lanes which can be used for narcotics trafficking between the North and South American continents. And given its fragmented jurisdictions, scattered over 2,754,000 square kilometers of sea space, with countless cays, coves, and islets, the Caribbean has become an attractive destination, a paradise, I think that's the word used nowadays, for money launderers, tax evaders, and assorted transnational criminal cartels. But these crimes have the potential of disrupting our paradise, disrupting our economies, of corrupting officials, of subverting our institutions, of perverting our youth, and of spawning frightening levels of crime and violence in society. Ladies and gentlemen, your task force's recommendations are necessary to insulate the region's financial sector from the crimes of money laundering and the financing of terrorism. Your task force's recommendations can help to insulate the region's economies from contamination by dirty money and by protecting the integrity of our financial sector from the risks associated with ill-gotten gains. Your task force's recommendations will help also to cultivate a stable financial sector that will allow for the facilitation of international trade and investment, and that will enhance the interconnectedness between the region's financial sector and the global banking system in order to prevent our banks from being blacklisted. Ladies and gentlemen, the Cooperative Republic of Guyana is honored to host this 46th plenary meeting of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. We wish you, the visiting delegates, fruitful deliberations and a pleasant sojourn in our country. The presence of so many distinguished ministers, attorneys general, and officers at this meeting is evidence of the importance that Caribbean governments attach to the task force's core responsibilities for the peer review process of the mutual evaluation program. The work to be done during this meeting is a necessity for guaranteeing the integrity of the region's financial sector, and particularly for preventing money laundering and the financing of terrorism. We are confident that the task force's work will improve the security and prosperity of the region and, of course, the safety and happiness of our people.
This is a memorable moment and indeed an auspicious day for our country to be afforded the very valuable opportunity to lead a regional drive in the global fight against money laundering, the financing of terrorism, and the proliferation financing. In this regard, the call to be of service to the wider Caribbean Basin family of nations, which I embrace with a sense of national pride and personal humility, formally begins at the close of the plenary session on Thursday. Left unchecked, the predations of transnational criminal organizations, terrorist financing networks, and increasingly importantly for this region, returning foreign terrorist fighters have the potential to adversely impact in a significant way the peace, tranquility, and economic security of our region. So constant vigilance by all of us is critical. And for all of us gathered here and for this plenary meeting, this means effective implementation and the highest levels of compliance with the CFATF recommendations. Given the highest level of importance to identifying, assessing, and understanding the extent of the national money laundering and terrorist financial risks, and taking the necessary measures to prevent or mitigate those risks by allocating resources and implementing appropriate measures and policies by applying the risk-based approach. I will cherish the preparatory steps and steep but rewarding learning curve that started a year ago in the Turks and Caicos Islands, and the close working relations and strong bonds of friendship that have been established along the way between Madam Chair, the Honorable Rondelie Braffith Knowles, and the immediate past Chair, the Honorable Faris Arwari, and I. I would like to express Guyana's gratitude to the CFATF Council of Ministers for the unanimous support that they give to our work program for the coming year, which will build upon the successes of the current and all previous chairs. I am very optimistic that with the support of all who are visiting with us on this occasion, that the CFATF will continue to grow from strength to strength in undertaking its core functions, which center on the mutual evaluation program. Please accept my best wishes for a successful and enjoyable plenary meeting.
Some of you may have noticed that we now have a fairly regular fixture at CFATF, and that is the tripartite relationship of chairman, deputy chairman, and also your immediate past chairman. And over the last 2 years, this has become a new feature of CFATF, and one which has really anchored the work of our FSRB. You see, in this particular formula, we have managed through careful planning of the Secretariat's work and through dedicated involvement to ensure that our FSRB is not subject to the vagaries of the talent from one chairman to the next. Because what we noticed in the 19 years journey to get here, if you were to really look at the core work and not the full length of time of being in existence, you will notice that our institution, as we go further and further into the mutual evaluation exercise and the true peer review at a deeper level focusing on effectiveness, that we have not managed to capture the continuity of enterprise. And we have been very, very blessed as an FSRB to have a chairman who I think doesn't understand the concept of ego. Hers is the smallest in the room at any one moment in time, and she unleashes an arsenal of weaponry that knows no equal. That weaponry includes the ability to charm you into staying in your seat, the ability to encourage you to skip meals and other natural breaks that you may be inclined to want to have. And she says, perhaps most charmingly, that it's because she's not an elected politician. In fact, she's an appointed Attorney General. But the testimony of her exercise really anchored in yesterday when she managed to capture the Attorney General for Guyana, chain him to his seat, capture the Attorney General for Barbados and the Attorney General for Trinidad and Tobago in a 12-hour marathon session to finish work which has been outstanding for CFATF for a very long time. And I wish to pay her the most warm compliment. It's not easy when you are the Attorney General in your home country to actually manage to focus on your own event, because the call of nation is constantly at your heels. And in Guyana, we've had in the opening a show which is beyond belief. Barbados, I have you in my prayers. It's going to be a hard act to follow. Not only is this plenary the best organized plenary that I've seen in a long time, everything from its seating to its organization, but we have been spoilt by the warmth and good food and charm of Guyana, and I thank you, Attorney General for Guyana. In our reflections, I'd ask you to remember that the Attorney General for Guyana volunteered to come in as the deputy chair when we lost the Dominican Republic. He, like me, in 2015 was a freshly minted Attorney General, diving into FATF and CFATF work. For me, I come from a corporate background, so I had a bit of swimming experience. But the Attorney General for Guyana, the Attorney General for Turks and Caicos, stepped up to the podium, stepped up to the task, and committed themselves, not only by way of word, but by way of measured performance to carry our FSRB to the very place that we just heard reflected by such a beautiful voice. In Guyana, rising from the ashes, as the song asks us to consider, and in the passion and cadence of the song that we just heard, I can truly say from my reflections as the immediate past chair that I really do believe that CFATF is in a much better place today than 3 years ago, and that it is at the cusp of flight. Permit me, in beginning to wrap up, politicians are wont for a very long run-up to the wicket, and then we deliver. But permit me to remind you that we have a joint experience and a joint destiny. Trinidad and Tobago is the first of our 25-country basin to go into the 4th round mutual evaluation. We're the first in enhanced follow-up. We are the first in ICRG, in FATF, and CFATF. And the experience that comes out of that first sojourn has been a very interesting one that I ask you all as member states to take note of. Firstly, I will say that our Secretariat has distinguished itself in holding Trinidad and Tobago's hand as a jurisdiction through the vagaries and uncertainties of being first in line. Secondly, I will remind that there are many who will seek to prosper on ratings, and in particular, the effect from correspondent bankers is a very sincere one. We in Trinidad and Tobago had the experience of a very positive reflection from the FATF group at its plenary in Argentina just recently concluded. In that exercise, we were granted the benefit of part of our supervision continuing in ICRG by CFATF and a part at FATF. And a very positive reflection was put out. But for those who were not interested in educating themselves, and in particular for some of the correspondent bankers, we were immediately met with a statement that we were being negatively treated and we were being blacklisted, even though there is no blacklisting in the 4th round. And our correspondent bankers took the opportunity to immediately levy on Trinidad and Tobago an $8 US charge per banker's draft issued in Trinidad and Tobago. And that came about because the profitability and consequence of opportunity in the commercial market, and not because CFATF didn't do its part or FATF didn't do its part. It came about because a collective advocacy is required in our grouping to educate, inform, and sometimes push back against sharp practices. And therefore I warn that even though our jurisdictions may be well prepared for the eventualities of the outcome of our 4th round mutual evaluation and enhanced follow-up exercise and ICRG pooling or ICRG treatment, depending upon the size of our economies, that there are real consequences. And it's best put in the reflection of Chinese military management: death by 1,000 cuts. That's what this is about. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And I really do encourage CFATF in the coming year to gel in a more meaningful sense, to participate in the call for nations coming forward to joint review, because when joint group comes to consider what ICRG's post-observation period reporting will look like, that dreaded acronym POPA, as Carlos has so clearly understood, because he bled his blood out for Trinidad and Tobago as a Deputy Executive Director, I wish to say on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago that we owe a sincere debt of gratitude as a jurisdiction to the very excellent work of our Secretariat, and in particular our Deputy Executive Directors who led the charge. But if jurisdictions don't come together to participate, we're going to be denying ourselves the opportunity to be forewarned and therefore forearmed. We're going to be denying our opportunity for growth in the jurisdictional and assessor experience, and we're going to miss the opportunity to be intimately informed and aware of the real issues, including death by 1,000 cuts. So, we're on for plenary, we're on for our core business, we're in a great place as an FSRB. Some of my fulsome praise for your incoming chair and outgoing chair, I will certainly leave for that event, but I ask us to enjoy the plenary.
We have achieved together robust global standards to protect the financial system and deprive criminals and terrorists of their funds. The FATF Global Network today consists of the FATF and 9 regional bodies, among them the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. This network now includes more than 200 jurisdictions that have committed at the highest level to implement these standards and to being assessed by their peers using the FATF methodology. We work closely with a number of key international partners, including the UN and the Egmont Group. In spite of our global efforts, however, the threat from money laundering, terrorist financing and proliferation financing has never been greater. We are now focused on assessing how effective countries are in dealing with these threats. It is not enough to pass laws, you must use them and have the capacity to do so. Implemented effectively, these measures will protect economies, increase competitiveness and attract foreign direct investment, lending a country a reputation as a good and safe place to do business. Nearly 3 years have passed now since our first assessment under the new methodology. For the FATF and FSRBs, this evaluation process has been a tough job, and I would like to recognise the contribution made by CFATF to the global network. I commend especially your continued commitment and tenacity in pursuing your work and in organising this plenary, particularly following the massive impact of recent hurricanes in the region. Mutual evaluations are a challenging and resource-intensive task for everyone, FSRBs and the FATF alike. Evaluations require operational experts from countries to dedicate huge amounts of time to be assessors, for all countries to closely scrutinise these assessments, and for secretariats to be properly resourced and to operate as efficiently as possible. In this regard, let me welcome the endorsement by CFATF of its strategic plan for 2018 to 22 that emphasises the importance of the 4th round of mutual evaluations, providing for the recruitment of additional positions in the Secretariat and helping and adjusting the schedule, which will now allow you to take 4 rather than 3 evaluations a year. We know it's a tough job, but we need to do it, and we stand ready to assist you in achieving your goal in producing additional quality evaluations. Improving the quality and consistency of mutual evaluations is a process requiring sustained effort by all of us. I encourage CFATF to continue its own efforts to improve the quality of evaluations. Furthermore, I urge CFATF members to ensure the procedures for MEs are followed properly, as sticking closely to such procedures and the related deadlines has a direct and substantive impact on the quality of evaluations. FATF and FSRBs are already entering a new phase with the 4th round follow-up reports. Follow-up in the 4th round presents new challenges in that we now have to ensure quality and consistency not only within our own individual organisations, but throughout the global network. In Buenos Aires, the FATF plenary endorsed changes to the universal procedures aimed at ensuring a minimum level of consistency among assessment bodies. I encourage CFATF to incorporate these changes into its own procedures as soon as practical. I also welcome the fact that the CFATF is developing its own process, as we've heard, similar to the ICRG process, which links in with CFATF's mutual evaluation follow-up. This initiative is especially timely, as it can provide much-needed advice in terms of how compliance may be best achieved. It will also encourage countries under review to take advantage of the 1-year window to rectify deficiencies prior to the formal start of the FATF ICRG review for those that meet the criteria. For that reason, it is important that CFATF's ICRG procedures be consistent with those of the FATF, And I encourage CFATF members to engage further with the FATF ICRG and to actively contribute to the work of the Americas Joint Group. I'd now like to turn briefly to the FATF's objectives for this year. The Argentine presidency will notably put focus on certain elements of FATF's core work. They're important to this region as any other. Financial inclusion. The FATF will maintain its focus on financial inclusion. FATF will continue to work with others, including the Financial Stability Board, under the oversight of the G20, to monitor and address the risks from the decline in the number of correspondent banking relationships, as well as the practice of some of the largest global banks to exit or restrict business with whole categories of customers. Enhancing transparency and integrity of financial flows. This is of particular interest for CFATF, I know. The FATF will continue to focus on improving the transparency of legal persons and legal arrangements through the effective implementation of its standards, in particular by stressing the need for the availability of timely, up-to-date and accurate beneficial ownership information. And again, CFATF's initiatives in this regard are most welcome. In addition, the FATF this year, through the Global Network, is reaching out to the prosecutorial services and criminal justice systems of FATF members. This initiative will highlight the intricate structures that are used for legal and illegal activity, and also throw light on the growing nexus between organised crime and terrorism, thus helping to raise awareness with national authorities and the private sector in order to be able to detect criminal activity, terrorism, and attempted misuse of the financial system. Meaningful engagement, collaboration, and effective communication with the Criminal Justice Service is absolutely vital. The FATF presidency recognises that the legitimacy of global AML-CFT efforts rests not only in effective prevention, but in convictions, financial sanctions, freezing, confiscation, and asset recovery for the benefits of both states and victims. Finally, this year, we're pleased to see the convening of the G20 presidency by Argentina, as well as the presidency of the FATF. FATF will continue to ensure that AML-CFT issues are highlighted and considered in the G20. Despite the challenges all countries faced in effectively implementing the standards and demonstrating and communicating this through peer reviews, our success has never been more recognized by world leaders. The outcomes of the G20 meetings are now heavily focused on supporting not just the FATF, but even more the FSRBs. The G20 summit in Hamburg again supported efforts to strengthen the global network, which we will continue to do so in partnership with the CFATF and others. I am confident we can meet the increasing expectations of the international community. So while I call on CFATF to maintain its participation in our joint endeavour and hold each other to the same standards, I also assure you that we in the FATF and my team in Paris are here to work with and support you. Thank you.